Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. And anytime I'm in the presence of my good friend and councilman, Reverend McDowell, I'd like for you to give the indication before we get started.
You're so comfortable here, man. I appreciate that. What about heads? Gracious and eternal God, for all that you've done for us, for the blessings of this day, for life, health, and strength. Lord, we pray as a family today in the city that you might touch us individually and yet collectively. Allow us to sense and to feel your power and your presence. We ask it and we claim it in your name. Amen.
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 Agenda packs are in front of us. Does anybody have any proposed changes to the minutes?
I did not have any changes.
No, sir.
Or can we get a motion to approve?
So move.
Second? Any opposed? All right. All right, moving on. We have a exciting agenda today. And we have first, the Vista Guild Lincoln Street Tunnel Public Art Project. And just to catch everybody up to speed, this originally came to us when we approved it to go to One Columbia. One Columbia has endorsed it. And today we're going to receive a presentation about that endorsement. And we're able to ask questions regarding the project before making a decision if it should go to full council for the city attorney to draft an easement and be presented to council. So I would like to ask either Abby or One Columbia to speak on the project.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I had to think about what time it was. So thank y'all for revisiting this to talk a little bit more about our Lincoln Street Tunnel project. We presented this to you, and with the help and support of One Columbia, we would like to bring it back to you for your support. One Columbia has issued their letter, but we are hoping to install a light installation inside the Lincoln Street Tunnel that spans from underneath Washington Street to the other end at Taylor Street. So it would be for that whole block to do something up above that would it would be a large art installation, but it will also help with the safety of that area. And we'll draw people our hope is to do it next fall to help drive people to Finley Park and vice versa, to draw people from Finley Park back to the Vista to kind of get an experience from both of those areas. So we've worked with One Columbia to send out an RFQ, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback so far. It's still viewed any of the artists that have submitted anything yet, but we are working with One Columbia to move.
Any questions? Councilwoman Herbert? Councilman McDowell?
Hi, Ed.
Good fact.
As far as budget for it, how are y'all on that?
We're good. We received a large grant 2 years ago that we've just kind of been waiting to see what large-scale public art project we wanted. And so we received a $150,000 grant for this project. So working with One Columbia, part of it will go to how that process goes. And so there's money that comes from that budget, which will then go to a fund that the city and One Columbia would take care of it in the future in case it needed any changes. But $135,000 is what would go to the artist.
Good.
Thank you.
Any more, Abby?
I mean, as of right now, that's what we have. I think it's a pretty good large-scale public art
I
piece.
think so.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody from One Columbia want to speak about it? The process of endorsing it?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about details too, if you all are interested in that. But we are partnering with the Vista on this project in order to work the public art process. The way is we post the call on a public art site that's able to collect the information from the artists we need. It's pretty standard across the U.S. People use this site. It's called callforentry.org. So it's out there. Anybody at all can, any artist can apply to it, including local artists. We've put out some marketing things to to apply for this project. After we receive all the applications, our typical process goes that we have our selection committee, which is always made up of artists, stakeholders from the city, and area residents and businesses. They review all the applications. We'll shortlist 3 artists. Those artists will then do proposals. They'll get paid for their proposals. The reason we don't ask for proposals up front is because we don't believe artists should be doing work without getting paid for it. So then each of those 3 shortlisted artists will get an opportunity to present over Zoom their project, the proposal, the idea, the budget, a maintenance plan, and then the committee will score those. We always score on a rubric so that everybody gets the same, gets a fair chance at scoring. And then the rubric typically consists of the aesthetic appeal, the connection to the area, what it's made of, that it will last long term, that it won't need to be maintained anytime in the future. Not maintained at all, but as well as the materials can do.
I did have one question, because I love these designs that we see in here. But what is the lifespan in general for, in some of these examples, the stringed lights?
Let me say 2 things, and then I'll answer your question.
Okay.
One, those in there are strictly just what is out there right now. Those are not things that we would be moving forward with. The proposals coming from the artist may look similar, or one of those artists might apply, but those are just examples.
Right.
But
I
the
just
lighting
forgot.
will be sufficient,
Yes. It's in the application that they have to maintain the same number of lumens
Yeah.
as already is in the tunnel. And I'm guessing that some artists are going to utilize the lights that are already there. They're going to propose that, or propose just changing a few of them out to maybe be colored lighting.
How many are there now?
How many applications?
No, the light,
lights.
lumen.
Oh, the lumens. I don't know that detail. It's in the RFQ. Let me try to find it.
Actually, we've taken a dark space and we're lightening it up, and that in itself is a victory for everybody, I think. A lot of folk wanted to go down that tunnel during dark hours. The lights is going to give it a real different appeal, and
Look at this light.
that is good.
And that's our
Yeah.
hope. A few years ago, we worked directly with Parks and Rec, and they updated all of the lighting in there and made it a lot brighter and safer for people just walking through. But it is our hope that we would keep it just as bright with the lumens that we're looking for in here. But just kind of make it somewhere that is also a destination where people will come to town and go, we need to go see those lights in the tunnel. I will say we also asked some of the businesses in the RFQ, some of the artists, to appreciate the history of the tunnel. And so it's not just, we're going to put something super funky that has nothing to do with the city, but like that was where our railroad tracks were not terribly long ago, just 30 years ago or so. And so just trying to appreciate the railway and everything that went in there. So that was something that we did try to include, not to say that it's going to look like a train coming through, but some elements that would help appreciate the history of it as well.
Good.
And I'll answer your question. I'm sorry, I kind of got off track with that. It depends on the type of material. And I'll say this, murals don't typically last any longer than 10 years unless they're upkept very well every several years. Outdoor sculpture has about a lifespan of 20 years unless it's made of something like quartz and steel, and then it can last forever. But that's something that we do during the process as we check all of these materials that they're going to use. Lighting, it'll be LED, I know that for sure, because that's the best option. That's what's typically used in a public art project. But LED lighting in the tubes has different ratings on how much moisture and dirt it can keep out. So we'll make sure that they're using the highest rated lighting. I can't speak to how often the lighting would have to be replaced, but that's why it'll probably be maybe 5 years, not replaced, but maybe refurbished. And that's why we set that 20% of the artist fee aside for maintenance.
Now, Pamela, a question I have is, do y'all envision in the future, let's say 10 years from now, that a new art project will need to come to the tunnel that become dated, or we should look for the foreseeable future?
No, I don't think so. And I think there are plenty of other opportunities for lighting projects around the city, if the city would want to expand a lighting project. But I don't believe that anything in there would cause us to have to do a whole new project anytime soon. I would say that might be 20, 25 years in the future.
Thank you.
That's way beyond us. Let there be light, good grief. Good job.
I'll let you know when I find the lumens in this.
Oh, no.
Any other questions?
Do we need an endorsement?
We need a vote to endorse, or?
So move.
The endorsement is more of a consensus.
Oh, yeah, because yeah.
I'm sorry. Well,
So move.
I endorse.
Essentially.
I'm in favor.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving the agenda along.
Thank you.
Third item, Park Street Public Art Project. And Abby or somebody from One Columbia, the floor is still yours.
All right, so we're back with our next public art project, which we are looking for your approval on again, now that we have the buy-in and excitement from One Columbia. We are looking to add a outdoor wall sculpture to the trash enclosure on Park Street, which is a new thing that happened just about 3 years ago when we updated Park Street with the City of Columbia to get rid of that parking and add outdoor seating to that block. There is now that brick trash enclosure that holds all of the Herbie Kirby's for that street, for Pearl's Oyster Bar, the Oyster Bar Columbia, and Pops. And so we would look to just kind of freshen that up and make it a beautiful wall sculpture. So not just a mural, but something that people can create that will kind of sit off of the wall so that people can come and interact with it and see it. So that's what we're looking for. This is a $20,000 budget that we have as part of our public art that we get from H-Tax from the city. And so we always put money in a public art fund. So our goal is that we would launch this or unveil it in Artista Vista in April of 2025. So we've been working with One Columbia. We do have the RFQ out for this one as well. And so our budget's $20,000, but $16,500 would go directly to the artist for this project.
Now, Abby, the mural that we talked about some years ago on the other side of the street. I'm looking at the right, I'm on the right side.
Yeah.
The Oyster Bar is on the left side, right? Where the trash.
So the Oyster Bar is on the west side of the street,
on the
correct?
west side,
Yep.
yeah.
And so right outside the
Yeah.
Oyster Bar is that, well, depending on where you're standing, right? So it's the trash enclosure that's right outside of there. It's a brick building.
And what wall is that? Is that the wall?
That's the wall. That's where we would look to add this wall sculpture. Yeah, you can see in that image.
Okay.
The top picture.
That's that top picture, that enclosure there.
Yeah.
So there would be two areas on that structure that we would do something. One is a street-facing wall, and then there's the sidewalk-facing wall. So we would look to have an artist do something on both sides.
Looks good to me, Madam.
Let's go for it.
Sir Chairman.
Well, I have some questions from One Columbia about, I guess, the process on selecting the artists and ideas that y'all have. Can y'all talk about that some more? The same artist selection process?
Yes, we use the same artist selection process for pretty much everything. It's considered best practices to be equitable in that way. And then everything we're doing for the tunnel, we're also doing for this one. It's posted on callforentry.org. We put out some marketing about it to get local artists to apply. And the selection committee will be the same. The Vista has a public art committee, so everything will be the same.
So is the Vista Public Art Committee selecting the art, or One Columbia has their own selection committee that we selected the art?
So for a project, and this is the way that we have been doing it, for a project that comes from an outside entity and that they're paying for it, we make a selection committee that is specific to that place. It's site specific. So that's why it includes business, business owners and residents from the area, as well as artists and other stakeholders. One Columbia, and this is something that maybe we need to have another meeting to discuss, is when things come before you all as gifts of art, like a project that's already started, we'll have some folks reviewing that from One Columbia because Xavier and I, we don't pick art. That's not our role.
So in my understanding then, so the Vista Guild pretty much has their own artist selection committee that is representative of business owners, residents of the area, and other artists, correct?
Yes.
And so I guess it's a question for us, and then I'll ask legal opinion on this as well. This is our first time going through this process. So in the event that there's somebody who does not have a selection committee like the Vista Guild does and has $300,000 they want to put some art, and they go through a similar process, do we have the mechanism in place for a selection committee who will review that type of art before we just approve an easement and then they put whatever they want on the public property? I think that's where there's some disconnect in what we have going on. So right now, One Columbia does not have their own independent selection committee for art outside of y'all two.
We
Those are
don't.
great, two people.
We don't have one put together yet. We have started looking at different people from the community and trying to vet them so we can still get that same balance of artists, stakeholders, business leaders, and residents.
So you have not ruled out the possibility of a person, resources being available to do their artwork that's not a part of the Vista Guild?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
If you got a selection committee, and if that person is outside of that selection committee, can they do that?
Can they be on the selection committee?
Oh, yeah.
They can come to us and ask to be on the selection committee. For the Vista, they put together their selection committee, but for anything we do, absolutely, somebody can be on it. And we treat this like open information. So anybody that wants to see the people that applied or see the scores afterwards, they're welcome to see that.
That'd be good. And the reason I raise that is because 2.5, 3 years ago, we had this whole issue about the garbage cans. And we want to make sure that if we got any traction in this process, that the city has some traction in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's all right for you all to have a selection committee. That's fine. But I would think that it need to be all inclusive. It need to be all inclusive. That not only do we do a mural, similar to what we're going to do on Park Street, but that we have something that's going to be representative of 5 points of the Vista Guild and the city of Columbia.
And I do think that,
Sorry, so that's one thing that Henry and I, Mr. Simons and I briefly spoke about last week, as just kind of offline, is, since we are kind of the guinea pigs of this process, like, what does it look like? And so, like Pamela said, our committee, I can tell you who's on it. This is just our Vista Public Art Committee. And so it's been around for years. We've had a few come and go, but like Clark Ellefson, he's an artist here in our area. He helped start the Vista Guild. Pamela has sat on our Public Art Committee. We always have looked to have someone from One Columbia. Lee Snowgrove still sits on our Public Art Committee. He's at the library, but he started One Columbia. Fred Delk, a longtime board member of ours, sits on our committee. And Joseph Kendrick from CMFA, he's the assistant director of CMFA, and he's a board member as well, but very passionate about the arts. So I think that's everybody.
I think we, as a council and a committee, I believe, we've worked with the Vista Guild, we've worked with One Columbia, we've worked with the projects that are coming through right now. But I think as a point of further growth,
It needs to be.
we need to, in the future, maybe as our local arts agency, if y'all could think about developing a public art selection committee.
That is all
Bring that
inclusive.
here.
Well, so, sorry, before you get to that, so what I was going to say is when Mr. Simons and I spoke, we discussed, since we are working so closely with the city on these two projects, and this is a new thing, do we include someone from the city? Do we include someone from council? Like, this will go to council for approval, but it's still before we know who the artist is. So while we're in this process, the question is, do you guys think, and this is going to be something we can talk about before the next one, that we should have someone from the mayor's office, someone from the city, someone to sit on this committee with us so that it's, stakeholders from the Vista, but then also someone from the city to work closely with us on this. So just wanted to say that.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. You're bouncing, man. You ready to talk?
I am.
Hey, Jeff, you ready? Look, it would seem to me that it'd be an all-inclusive, I mean, sort of similar to what happened down the street here, that's the 1400 block, where the mural was done on the side of that building.
Yeah.
It would seem to me that it needs to be an all-inclusive arena.
Yeah.
Where folk are able to, whether you got representatives from the city, whether you got representatives from whomever,
Yeah.
it needs to be all-inclusive. And that it not be just conjoined with the Vista Guild. That it be, if it's city, I mean.
Yeah. And as far as our projects go, we would welcome
all I
someone
draw
from the
is-
city to sit on
All I
it.
draw is stick men. That's the only thing I can draw.
Oh, well, then you're not on our committee. We can find someone else.
And guess what, Abby? Guess what, Abby? I don't want to be.
No, I know. So something for y'all to think about. We would welcome someone from the city to
we
sit on
can
that
have that
committee to
kind of
help.
discussion down the road.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to your point, Tyler. Pamela and I have been talking about trying to start a public art committee for the city. We've been looking at cities that do best practices, and this is one of the best practices for cities when they have public art. Is it's not just two people deciding or three people deciding; it's community stakeholders. And we've got a kind of a small list together that we kind of reach out to people. But I can share that with you all, so you all can have a look at what we're thinking about in terms of building that committee to make it an all-inclusive city public art committee.
Good.
Yeah,
Great. And
for
I
sure.
think what we'll do is on a future meeting, we'll have this as a discussion
Yeah.
point, so we can talk about developing that.
Correct.
Bring it to the council for consideration.
Yeah, because I do think it's best practices in terms of equitability and inclusiveness and making sure everybody's involved in the process to make sure we have a kind of a cohesive
correct.
idea of what we're doing in public art for the city.
correct.
For sure.
We don't want this just being anybody with the most money can get whatever art they want.
Right.
If I wanted to get this bald-headed bust of mine.
Because you have the most money. You know?
No, I don't have no money. Not at
Which
all.
one?
I don't have no money. I sure don't have it. Me and Rev. Pay homage to our bald
Thank you,
head.
ma'am.
Thank you. So do we have consensus that we shall endorse the Park Street Public Art Project?
I like it.
I am in favor, great. Thank you. And moving right along to the last item on our agenda, the Community Reinvestment Act. And this has been placed here after, I believe, a work session where Councilwoman Herbert and our community development staff briefly discussed it. So I'm excited to hear more information about it.
Thank you. So what I did realize is that we kind of needed to take a step back and make sure everyone had a good understanding. Felicia and I were calling and talking, and in the middle of the conversation, I said, okay, I think we need to start with the basics. So that's where we wanted to start today. The Community Reinvestment Act, essentially, every bank is involved on some level. That's fine, because that's a lot of words. Really, I mean, I could keep going, but so every bank has that responsibility. And it depends on who exactly they respond to. But what I did find interesting is that a goal of meeting credit needs of low and moderate LMI communities. I did not know it was that specific. So that is really in line with some of the things that we do, but it also helps dictate how we can use the money. Miss Erica, you can go to the next one. Just briefly, they're not all monitored by the same groups. It could be the state, it could be one of two national groups, but I don't think we want that deep. But, next one, Miss Erica. This is what I thought was important, how they evaluate it. They have 5 different categories, and this would be a Jeff question because I have no idea what the different levels would be. What is the next one, Miss Erica? All right, so they look at description of the bank and its community, conclusions about the bank's performance, discussion of the facts and data supporting the conclusions. And each bank, what we need to know is given an outstanding, satisfactory, needs improvement, substantial non-compliance. Those are the ratings. If you could take to the next one, you can skip that. So we can look up every bank to see what their performance is. I looked up the national banks that are regulated by one of those federal agencies, and these are the only 7. And I'm gonna read them out loud, 'cause that looks a little. First Bank, First Horizon Bank, JP Morgan Chase, RBC, Regions Bank, South Trust Bank, and Synovus Bank. And correct me if I'm wrong, some of those banks we don't even have in South Carolina,
That's correct.
right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So, one other thing I did, Reverend McDowell, is we had a lot of conversations about Bank of America.
That's correct.
And so if you go to the next slide, Erica, I didn't go deep dive, but I was able to pull their service areas. And now I see why Bank of America doesn't do anything here. We are not, Columbia or Richland County is not a part of their service area.
What about Wachovia?
I only looked at,
Wells Fargo.
I didn't go through all the banks. This was my preliminary research, and because we had already talked about, but I'm kind of giving an example of the information that we can get on all of these different banks. But that is the answer to that. It's not there. They submit a plan, and we are not a part of their plan. And this is quite short next presentation. Based on the preliminary research, what we have talked about, Felicia and I talked about this, we think that next steps would be, first of all, making sure we know what we have access to. So which of the banks in Columbia are listed or that have a CRA, because they may not all have them. And then also seeing how to go about that process. And Felicia may want to discuss this, but she talked to different people and they really do have different application processes. And then they also have various areas of focus. So what I was thinking was that we could ask staff to take up next couple of months is to kind of highlight, do some research on what's available out there for us before we get into where we can allocate money and where it can go. We really need to see what the options are out there. And then we can make informed decisions, or we may realize we can't do anything. But I think we need to start with that.
Can you say something?
Felicia, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Go right ahead. Go ahead.
At the mic, please.
Get to the mic.
I just want to say that typically Community Redevelopment Act funds can be used for beautification, especially on facades, to do murals, other public art projects. Same with community development block grants.
Okay.
You wanted to make sure we know that you can be funded. I just want to make sure, Ms. Erica.
Excited that y'all are talking about it.
She
Excited to talk
wants to
about
make
it.
sure that one Columbia could be funded through that. But point well taken.
Felicia, let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Because the larger banks are disproving CRA program. The church that I pastored some years ago was a part of a CRA program that was Nations Bank.
Right.
Now they aren't doing anything. I find a lot of the smaller banks, and when I say smaller banks, smaller than Bank of America and Wells Fargo, endeavoring to do this kind of program. Why is it, and maybe you can answer this, why is it that there are smaller banks that's yoking themselves together in a CRA program and larger banks aren't?
Microphone, please.
And if down the road somewhere, and I think this is what you're asking, Tina, it would certainly be helpful to identifiably recognize who those smaller banks and the rest of those
All of
are the
them.
larger banks.
Yeah, we want all of them.
Yeah, that's it. We want large and small.
Right. So basically,
I'm sorry.
you want them all come to the table.
It would certainly be helpful. The
And
reason I raise this is that because of the CRA program, my church, the church that I pastored some years ago, were able to get funds from a CRA program in excess of over $3 million. Now I'm hearing nothing is being done. And that's, and ironically enough, on every bank wall, there's a CRA program or policy there that is just totally mind-boggling. So it would be good if we could get that kind of information.
so,
Sorry.
speaking from the smaller bank perspective, such as Security Federal, First Citizen Bank, although they're not that small, not quite as on the same level as a Bank of America or Wells Fargo. They generally do, or I have seen, we have experienced some support on the local level in various ways. One being their direct impact now is that they do support the city's city lenders program, where it's designed to support low to moderate individual purchasing home in the city of Columbia, and they partner with us in to support those efforts.
So they get credit for
And they
that
get credit for
because
each
they-
loan that they do in partnership with the city. In past years, they have also allocated funds to support some initiative that was carried out through the former Columbia Housing Development Corporation, which is now TN Development Corporation. They provided some funds to assist with the new homes that was built in the Lion Street community. They provided dollars to assist with closing costs at that time for new prospective buyers. And of course, I can't say I will not say that the larger banks are not in support of us. We do have to. I think we'll gain more support if we had a particular project or a particular initiative in place that we want to get their buy-in on.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
We have a Chase Bank that is in town, that's locally now. And I would assume that Chase is a part of the CRA program.
I'm sure they are.
What specifically are we talking about when we talk about community need? There needs to be an assessment of community needs within the city to recognize what those needs are and how we can best determine the dollar amount that's associated with that. There are some community needs like on Lion Street and several other places within the city of Columbia. But those are dollars that have been used and they ain't coming back. I don't see it.
Well, I think that's why we want to see currently what's available. So for instance, that bank, especially the Nationals, it may have changed its area. Like, so we put X amount of dollars here and we're gonna move here because they get to submit their strategies for approval. But I think that's why we want to get a listing of all of the banks here in Columbia.
Ideal.
And then what they're interested in,
And
so
they're
that we can craft, then we can come back and kind of look at what needs we have that will fit into what they have out there.
And their
And we can get
specific
$3 million.
areas. Yeah.
And I also, my understanding too, I'm gonna ask a couple questions in one breath, okay? My understanding is that we, as a local government, cannot necessarily control or get access to the funds to spend them how we want to spend them, but they could be used to help our advertising efforts and things like that. And then the second thing I would like to know is when we're talking about research, the banks that we partner with on projects, whether it's for community lending, et cetera, where they fall on their score, if they're satisfactory
Oh, yeah,
or
that's a
poor
good one,
performing.
score.
And then if we do have partners who could do better, we can have a conversation about them doing better. And they not divested or no longer in certain areas, possibly looking at some other banks and bringing them to those areas. Because talking about Chase, JP Morgan Chase, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about them trying to expand their presence in low to moderate income communities. And we just had our town hall where there was a conversation about not just food deserts, but banking deserts. So if there are some banks out there who want to expand in markets, and we know that we have banks that we do business with who aren't doing well, I think we should start having a conversation that if you want to continue doing business with the city, that you need to make sure you're doing right by our constituents in areas that don't have access to it.
You're closing Wells Fargo, but you're opening up Chase. And that in itself, I mean, I got 525 employees on Greystone. And I got a Wells Fargo on Main Street and a Wells Fargo on Fair Road. So if we're opening up new banks and we're closing down banks of the same size like Wells Fargo, we're closing them down.
Check cashing, but you can't get a bank account.
That's right.
Yep. So
Talk to me,
let me
Jeff.
just add a little bit of what we can do research-wise. So currently, we have roughly $500 million in investments for various things with many different banks. Now, a big chunk of that is also with the state treasurer's office. So it sounds impressive, but it's not all with the banks. Our city treasurer, Jessica, y'all met a few times. It might be good for us, maybe me, Felicia, and Jessica, to meet with our existing banks, talk about their investment portfolios, and have them come and talk to us about how they're meeting their CRA. They can, some of them, I will say a few of the smaller banks, we just talked about one of them earlier this morning. They love to come and brag about it because they want us to do more with them. And they start off a meeting by talking about what they're doing in the community. That does seem to be a tendency of the smaller banks. The larger banks, I was thinking about the fact that when you asked the question, they do probably move items around. I feel like we had brought up Bank of America. I feel like they came to the city 6 years ago or 7 years ago. There was a project locally that was done because I remember them with their big check and they were pretty proud of it. But I was a little disappointed to see the map that you just showed because then it doesn't show them focused on us. But we do some investments with them and have other things. So I would be interested for them to come and talk to us to say, hey, here's what we have done, and in the future, this is what we'll be looking to do.
That'd be ideal. That'd be ideal.
So we can certainly start setting those meetings up and bring back a report that talks about all of our banking partners and what they do locally and what their long-term plans are.
Have CRA programs, Jeff, been revamped over the years? And I'm sure they are. They are revamped. But when I look at a CRA program on the wall and look at a CRA program at another bank, most of them are similar. How different are they now?
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't had a good discussion on this since probably 2014-ish or so. I saw some of the conversation Friday, and it got me very interested thinking about that because we used to ask those questions many, many, many years ago as we were bringing in banking partners, how they are involved in that. So I don't know if guidelines have changed over the years, but I think, and you had mentioned a couple months, give us a few months. I think we can pull together a lot more information specifically with our direct banking partners, because they're going to be more than happy to share that information because we already have the relationship and they want to keep that relationship. So we should be able to pull a lot of interesting information just meeting with them.
Councilwoman Herbert would appreciate this. I was bored a couple weeks ago. I read a law review article about CRA. Yeah.
I really am appreciating that.
And it talked about there really being no public scrutiny to how banks are using their CRA funds, and it's really not commonly known. So I think even out of our research that we garner from this, maybe we could, put out something, a report from our committee about where the banks fall, and satisfactory, great, can use some help so people understand who they're banking with, who's helping their communities too.
Well, and that's what I was thinking about. So definitely the banks that partner with us with community development that have been doing it for years, how do we recognize them and say thank you for being partners? That's one thing, because the ones that we use, I'm thinking, have been there for years. And then I do remember the discussions from like 2014, 2015 of the ones that we are investing in under Jeff's pot, trying to see how they are showing the appreciation for the investments that we do have with those banks. So I would like to look at it both ways. How do we recognize the ones that are doing something, and then encouraging the other ones that are not? And I think that's also a good group to start with, as opposed to every bank. That's a good group to start with.
But Jeff, I think you're right. I think you're partially right.
I'll go with partial.
I think you're partially right.
What I'm talking about.
One of the things that I'm totally interested in this whole issue of CRA, and I've been thinking about CRA for the longest. It would seem to me that a critical need within our community is affordable housing. And if every bank invested in X number of dollars, if they were to adapt a CRA program, a usable CRA program, we could get rid of the homeless situation within our community. Now, that's gonna take some work. And it's gonna take pushing some banks to get on board with this whole CRA program. I don't know whether or not it's been, whether or not it's fallen through the cracks. The CRA program is non-existent now. I mean, some banks. And it's certainly interesting to hear that conversation about CRA and what they're doing for the community and what they aren't doing for the community. And that'll be a good conversation to start.
Did you have something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Alicia had something. I'm sorry, I wouldn't call.
So just to add to what Tina just mentioned about rewarding and recognizing the lenders, partner banks that have partnered with the city over the years. So the city community development, it would be celebrating our National Community Development Week. It's in April. But it's also our 50th year of community development being in existence with the city of Columbia. And so we're going to invite a lot of our partner lenders that partner with us now and in the past to our drop-in that we are planning to recognize those organizations, as well as other partners that has been involved with the city as well. Supporting not only affordable housing, but also assisting with multifamily housing, those sorts of things as well.
Absolutely.
So you'll find out more about that as we continue to plan and get a little bit closer to that time frame.
Well, there needs to be a genuine conversation, and whether or not feelings are hurt or not, but there needs to be a genuine conversation about CRA and what does it do for local communities in the city of Columbia? What's viable? What can take place? And right now, and I hate to say it, and I hate to be a doomsayer, but nothing is taking place. Very little,
We can't say that, Rev, because the
very little.
all of our partner banks are doing CRA work.
All right,
Like
that's fine.
So give them some credit.
I said that.
Well, I ain't gonna give no credit.
As long as
I think nations, Bank of America could do better than it's doing. I think Wells Fargo could do better than it's doing. You got a little bank like Optus Bank
Right.
that is supporting this, man. And you got a little bank like Optus and a mega bank like Bank of America ain't doing nothing. So I agree with the notion that smaller banks are doing something.
But Rev, that's not accurate. They aren't doing anything in this area. I don't think that's fair
All
to
right,
say
all
they
right.
aren't.
well, that's all we got.
That's right.
But here's the deal, that plan has been approved by the federal government. So I would rather us look at the viable plans, the money that is available now and the programs that are available to us now, as opposed to trying to get someone to move their strategic area. That's like asking us to move our strategic plan.
Well, if they're gonna do business with the city, we could possibly have their goals meet our goals.
Right, and that's what we're saying, like, but we have to get what they're, like, we gotta do the research so we can know, we don't even know what we're bargaining for or what we're asking for.
Erica, go back to that first slide where you know,
The first one had it, there you go, right there, the history.
yeah, the history. There it is.
Yeah.
That's it.
With the goal of meeting the credit needs of low and moderate income communities.
That's it. That's it. And I understand. Now go up or down, wherever. Where is that map of South Carolina? Right there.
That's Bank of America only.
And that's Bank of America only. See where it's at? That's right in the,
Charlotte area, where the headquarters are, that's where it is.
I can't see that far.
That's the Charlotte,
there's
Mecklenburg.
nothing in Columbia, man. Okay, all right.
But that's one bank and we get it, that's why I put it in there.
And that's right, and I'm glad you did, because
Yeah.
it gives us visibly something to look at and say, what?
Yeah, they are not here right now.
If we could do what you're suggesting, Tina, that we look at larger banks and smaller banks
Charlotte, Mecklenburg.
as it relates to where we are geographically. We need to look at that. And right now, we ain't got nothing to look at. Nothing at all.
Very valid point.
And
Very
so,
valid.
and so.
We gonna go get their data.
And so folk are suffering because the black church
Don't try and
deposits
take,
over $1 million, over $1 billion every year. I mean, golly. And we ain't got no CRO programs. And we got some, but they in Charlotte. And that's regrettable, man.
We're gonna work that out.
I'm making a note, I'm just making a note for potential uses, one Columbia and black churches, cause I think that's what I hear. I think that's what I hear you saying, Red.
We wanna know, if you have a CRA program, how is it benefiting our residents and constituents here? And
Districts 1 through 4 and
area, Columbia area, right
Well,
there.
what
in the middle.
qualifies, cause everything doesn't qualify for LMI. So there are gonna be areas that qualify.
use that, yeah.
I think, and I agree, but
It's
I know that
regrettable,
we don't
man.
have a lot of banks in North Columbia, and they're leaving. I think that we can do something about it by exploring CRA.
That's
I
exactly
think we're
right.
losing banks.
Exactly.
It won't have them come though.
We can make them come.
Well, as I say, if you want them to stay, you have to use them and they look at the number of deposits. It's a business decision, not a feeling decision. Whether it's a hard conversation or
Well,
not.
that's a good point, like the Department of Insurance regulates that if you're Allstate, and you wanna write insurance policies, you have to write insurance policies throughout the state. Or you won't be able to write, if you wanna do auto, you have to also do homeowners or something. That's what the Department of Insurance regulates. With banks necessarily, it's not the same here. So you can say, I only wanna have my bank in Forest Acres, because that's where all the money is. versus some of the areas that Reverend McDowell and I are talking about. But I think by us exploring it and having these conversations, it may incentivize them to want to do some more community good versus looking at things strictly as business.
Can we at some point, and excuse me, Tina,
No, I got a good one. I just thought of something good.
is it possible, Jeff, at some point in this conversation, that there be a meeting of the minds? And when I say that, whether it's the state treasurer or whether it's, I mean, we could start there, but it has to metastasize from state treasurer to local banks. And I don't want to be redundant at this point. I got Big Chase coming into South Carolina, into Columbia, and we're losing Wells Fargo, and something's not right with that picture, man. Okay.
So to just last thing I'll say to Tyler's point is using the CRA for the banks that may not be physically located like in North Columbia. I think the strategy is the banks that have the big deposits and thus a whole bunch of money, which increases how much money they had to donate. That money goes to the low to moderate income areas. I just want to make sure I'm clear. I do not think it's going to make a bank physically come, but another thing you can do is say, well, if you're not physically coming, you can donate, give us support and resources.
Well, I think we ought to have, if that doesn't happen, we have a withdrawal of our enthusiasm.
I second that motion.
We can't vote in committee meeting.
Do you have a consensus? That's the question. Do we have a consensus?
Of withdrawing our enthusiasm.
Withdrawing our enthusiasm. If the banks don't care about people, here's a disheartening article right now. I'm not gonna name the bank, but there's
Please
no
don't.
bank in Whitmire, the town of Whitmire anymore. The last one recently closed. So the whole town has no bank.
It's based on deposits. But those are business decisions. Those are not feel-good decisions.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's withdraw our enthusiasm.
No, because I'm telling y'all that's not gonna work. Okay, but we're the ones, but that's the kind of example though, that city should get some of these bigger banks to at least put some resources into their community. Does that make sense? Like, you can't have the physical building, but what resources can you help to maybe help us get deposits up? So.
It's been a great discussion.
Yes,
I
you all
think
have.
we ought to withdraw our enthusiasm.
I'm with you.
I want to thank Tyler and Rev for your robust input into my CRA discussion. I appreciate it, and it's well received. And I'm looking forward, and that's going to take some time to get that, but I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with it.
Yes. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Well, thank you, everybody. I think we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh, it's right at 3 o'clock. Wrong